Hello and welcome to the Alpha Software Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to be joined by Robin Bennett, one of our partners over in the UK. You've probably seen Robin Bennett speak before if you have been to some of these webinars. He's the founder of Start Software and has a nice business going there, developing apps in Alpha Anywhere and also in Alpha Transform. So today, Robin is going to be doing part 2 of a project that he was talking about, the Big C Challenge. And I'm just going to let him take it away. Hello, Robin. Are you there?
Hi, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Let me go ahead and make you the presenter so that you'll be able to share your screen. And you should see a dialog box on your screen.
Perfect. So you should now be seeing a presentation.
Big C Atlantic Challenge update. Thank you.
Cool, that's the one, yeah? Great.
That's it.
Yeah, perfect. So this, as you say, Dave, is the second part of a story that we started at the end of April, I think. And just looking at the stats on the YouTube version of the webinar, the recording that you put up, we've had, I think, 300-400 people watch that. So I think people were interested in the story. It's an amazing story. It's an incredible story. This guy that I've got on the screen here, Andrew Bedwell and the Big C Atlantic Challenge. It's one of the most amazing things I think I've come into contact with in decades. It's a phenomenal thing. The story, just like a spoiler alert here, we're not exactly telling the story we expected to tell today, Dave, but it's still a great story. And there's still lots of really cool alpha tech to talk you through. So let's get stuck in, but like I say, spoiler alert, it hasn't gone exactly to plan. Before we get into the Big C Atlantic Challenge, oh, Dave, by the way, as normal with my webinars, just chip in and ask questions and interrupt me, and please, it'll make it more interesting for me, because I've heard the story before. So
as a reminder to the audience, at any point you can ask questions by typing them questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel or the chat area of the GoToWebinar control panel, depending on your interface. You can always send them to guides to guides@alphasoftware.com, and I will interrupt Robin with your questions as we go.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. So we have just a 30-second recap about Start Software and who I am. We're 10 years in for, I think, using the Alpha Anywhere platform as our main development environment. We switched from the Microsoft product set about a decade ago. It's enabled us to build our business. It was probably 3, 4, 5 times the size that we were way back then. We've got developers in the UK, in the US, in Indonesia, and in Australia. So we're a worldwide business producing software for small companies, large companies, big corporations, either bespoke software and apps or products that we sell into marketplaces. That's who we are. We're getting the hang of it, we think. So what's the Big C Atlantic Challenge? Quick recap. If you watched the webinar at the end of April, then you'll know some of this, but just to tell people who aren't aware, I really enjoy reading stories about adventurers and about people who are willing to really push, I was going to say push the boat out, but that's probably not a great choice of words. People who really, extend what humans can do in terms of endurance and, just people that really make the hair on the back of your neck stand up, and Andrew Bedwell is one of these people. This is Andrew on the right of the picture here on his Facebook page, but on the left is a book that I found on Amazon. I'd heard a little bit about the story, and the picture there is a guy called Hugo Whelan, who is an American. He holds the world record for the crossing of the Atlantic in the shortest sailboat ever. And that book, The Stormy Voyage of Father's Day, tells the story of Hugo's journey in a boat that was 5 feet long. It's incredible. Well, you can see the picture of it there. He could barely sit down or lie down in it. He had to carry all of his own food, everything he needed for the crossing, which took about 3 months. And he got that record in about 1975, if my memory is correct, and that world record still stands today. Andrew, on the right there, Andrew Bedwell, I heard about him, got in touch with him, started to chat to him and learned his story. And he's a an incredible sailor who's done things like sailed across the Atlantic single-handed in a normal-sized boat. He sailed into the Arctic Circle in a sailboat. He sailed around Britain single-handed. Incredible sailor, incredibly resilient individual, and he decided to try and beat this record, but not to beat it by an inch or two or a few centimeters, but in fact to knock 2 feet off the record. So it's a 5-foot record. His boat, the Big Sea, is just over 3 feet long. Dave, it's beyond belief, isn't it? It's a meter long, this boat. It's extraordinary. So this is all about Andrew's story, and our involvement really came because he needed some support and he needed some tech. So we decided to sponsor the boat, and you can see here Andrew, the picture at the bottom here is Andrew bringing the boat to our offices here in the Midlands in the UK and meeting our team. The picture up here on the top right is where I went to see Andrew as he took his boat out for sea trials. And you can see our sponsorship here on the boat. We got involved because we believed in him and believed in the boat, and like I say, wanted to help him with some tech that he needed. And that's where we were. So at the end of April, that's where we were. And Andrew was about to set off to take his boat across the sea. He was packaging his boat up, so it went across by container ship from the UK to Canada to St. John's. And the plan was to set off next Saturday from St. John's to try and sail back to the UK. Now, just to underline, this is unsupported, so no boat helping him along the way. He's got to take all of his own food with him. He's got to take everything he needs with him. I think he had 1 change of clothes. And he was due to set off next Saturday. And that's where the story sort of finished last time. So let's just look at some of the, if I can just skip through some of the tech that we built for him. And we're building it with Alpha technology. So this is Alpha Anywhere. There's a bit of Alpha Transform in there. There's a bit of Alpha Launch in there. So I'll talk you through that now. And the first of 2 things we wanted to build, Dave, was the messaging app. So we wanted to build something using Alpha technology that Andrew could use to send us daily updates from mid-Atlantic. Now, where do we start with the challenges here? Because this is clearly got to be an offline app, because he needs to be able to create a message to us, without using any power or data. I say clearly, I suppose, if you're not aware of how difficult this is, all of the power on the boat is solar. He has a very small battery sort of bank to store that power. And the data, Dave, and I didn't know this actually when we spoke at the end of April, have a guess how slow the data transmission speed was using his satellite uplink. If you can have any guess at all, just have a go.
All right. Well, I'm not going to guess it's in the megabytes per second. High kilobytes per second, like
22 kilobytes per second.
20. Wow.
22. Now, going back from, I'm old. I'm old. I'm the same age as you, Dave. That says you're old.
Well, you are the same age as me, so I know you're old. Yeah. Okay.
Going back to when I got into computers in the 80s, I think modems were like 28K. That rings a bell. 14K.
28K. Yeah. 14K. 96 before that.
So we're talking about a modem, an uplink speed that's equivalent to a modem from the 80s. I mean, that's so.
It's like getting onto America Online or something, kind of.
Yeah, that's
or whatever whatever it was in the UK. Yeah.
So this is the challenges that Andrew was facing, or we were facing, I guess, to build the app. So something that would work offline, something that would work with really slow upload speeds, something you take with him on a standard bit of tech that would link across to this satellite phone thing. So we spent, actually, we built most of it, Dave, before the April webinar, but in fact, during most of May, we were testing it with him. He was hooking up his phone to his satellite device and sending us messages and things. And, that's always been really good and really interesting to see where it fails and where it doesn't work, and how you can build in extra resilience. So what we actually
just pause.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
At that speed, 28 kbps, is it possible to upload a photo? It must be very compressed, and I would think a video would be pretty much out of the question unless you can leave that line.
It is,
on.
weirdly, it is actually possible. Yeah. So the app that we built, so
Yeah.
if you can see this slide now on the left-hand side, I've got the app that we built for him, which was deployed using Alpha Launch, which is really cool technology. If you've not had a play with that yourselves in Alpha anywhere, have a look at Alpha Launch. It's like a shell app you can download from the app stores and easily deploy apps to it. Really, really easy. What we found, Dave, was that if he compressed the video so that it was less than a megabyte, so we're talking short videos, 10, 20, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
If the photos were small as well, if the audio files were small as well, he could actually send them. Although it's very slow, the satellite device, it was very reliable. So once it had got a connection, it didn't ever lose connection. It was just incredibly slow. So we were finding that a sync of one message with some text, a photo, a very, very small compressed video might take 6 minutes. But that was okay. He had enough power for that. So difficult, but okay. What
And certainly at the time at his hands, would be my guess.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly right. I mean, he's out there doing not very much in the middle of the Atlantic.
yeah.
So yeah, so time wasn't the issue. The device was reliable, so we found this to be okay. It's so important to have backups always, in things like this. So he also had on his phone Alpha Transform with a transform form we'd created, which captured the same information. And Dave, you told me last time on the webinar that we could link up the transform form to SQL tables directly.
That's right.
So yeah, so we did that. So in fact, the transform form was posting data to the same SQL Server tables as our app. So that was the backup, there so in good order. The only thing we couldn't capture with the transform form was the video, because it doesn't support it yet, I don't think.
That's correct. Yep.
Is that still true, by the way, in Transform 8, which is the new one, isn't it, that's just come out?
It is true. We are looking at supporting video. It's surprisingly not used as much as we would have thought it was. Otherwise, it would have already been a feature in the product. But it is something that we're looking into. Obviously, one of the big concerns, of course, is just the amount of space that takes up, especially on the device where you do have limited storage. But,
well, I was just going to say that, because I've just flicked to Alpha. Can you see Alpha okay there, Dave? Yeah.
I can, yeah.
Cool. So this is the component that is the messaging app for him to take with him. So it's just a single component. The component's called bigcupdates.ux. Let me just bring it up in working preview. This is essentially a list with a detail view. That's all it really is. It's not much more than that. But what we found, if I just go into the right screen, there we go. So here's the information he could capture. So he could type a message to us. He could geolocate where he was, take a photo, capture a video, capture some audio. These are all standard Alpha controls. There's a control here so he can say what type of weather he's experiencing, his estimation for the wave height, the wind speed.
You allowed for a pretty wide variance there.
Well, yeah, I mean, even in the summer, even in the summer, you get 100-mile-an-hour plus winds in the Atlantic, apparently. So yeah, and then the I Spy bit was just try and give him something to do. So I spy a turtle, or I spy a jellyfish, or I don't know. The test message thing, by the way, this is always a useful little trick. When you're capturing data, have a little option somewhere in the app so that you can record it as a test record rather than a real record, and it enables you to, and sometimes we hide these so that they're
and you could sort them out later. So is it just a field in the database?
It is. It's just a bit field, and what it means is, well, I'll show you in a minute live on the tracker app, which is coming up a bit later in the webinar. But yeah, we can look at test messages or live messages, and we sometimes hide these so it's not obvious where to tick. So it might be like hidden, behind a button or next to a button or a little pixel somewhere. So we can sort of we can record test records in amongst live records and still be able to differentiate them. So that's a useful little trick. So what I was going to say about the data volumes, Dave, was that the list sync, if we included the media file, so the photo, video, audio, then the list itself, because those fields were actually fields in the database, the content of those fields would go back to the list. And that then gets very data heavy, as you can imagine. So
Yeah.
as we refined this app over the last month or so, we realized that the list needed to have that information stripped out, and only when you select a record does it populate that information. So optimizing the sort of data transfer when you've got a 22K upload speed was pretty critical, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
So that was the messaging app. So the idea was he would take that out on his phone, take it into the Mid-Atlantic, and every day send us an update. We would then have that information from Andrew and his followers, because they'd be able to use the next part of what I'm going to show you, would be able to track how things were going. So back to here. Okay, so far, Dave, does that make sense?
Yes, you've seen the Alpha app, and you've built something similar again in Transform, which you had write the
Yeah,
data back. Is that correct?
that's exactly it. So if I just
Yeah.
drag Transform across.
Yeah.
So Transform form designer, such a cool interface.
Which
We
one
love
was
this.
faster for building the app?
Transform by a long way. Yeah,
But you
Transform
know
by
Alpha
a long.
Anywhere way more. So yeah.
Yeah, we wanted something that really had our DNA in it, so that's why we built something.
Of
And
course,
if
yeah.
we needed,
Something really, really custom. Sure.
yeah, something that was
Mhm.
us, and building apps is what we do for a living. So
Yeah.
that's why we did it in that. But Transform was a really good backup for us, because it was really quick to put the form together and
Yeah.
really easy to hook it up to the database as per your suggestion. So thanks for the suggestion. So that's how Transform came into this. This was a backup for his phone rather than the main app in this particular case. So
Okay.
this was the messaging side. Then that's where our story stopped at the end of April. So in April's webinar, that's as far as we got.
Yeah.
So then we came on to the sort of second part of the specification, which was a tracking website. Andrew wanted something so that his followers around the world could track him during the journey, see each day where he was, see how far he'd gone, see the current weather, all of that type of thing. And of course, the data we're catching from the messaging app was exactly the data that we needed to show. Now, Alpha's got some really cool mapping features in. It's got really cool integrations with Google Maps. So this is what we built. So we built bigctracker.app. And anyone watching the webinar live, if you want to go to that domain, bigctracker.app, Dave, if you want to do the same,
All right.
and you refresh, you should see what I'm seeing on my screen. Something very similar. If you're seeing it watching it on a phone, you might see something that's same information but presented differently, because it's a responsive site that we built. How's that going, Dave?
Bigctracker.app is loading right now for me.
Cool. So these are 3 live messages that Andrew sent us. This on the right hand side, I'm going to show you how we built this. So this is going to be the next sort of 10 minutes or so of the webinar.
Great.
This on the right hand side, this is a list control, as you'd expect. The rest of the sort of upper half of the screen is the detail view for the list, which makes sense. So if I click one of the records here on the right, if I click the one that he sent at 4:30 on the 21st of May,
Yeah.
he's on Topsail Beach checking out the conditions, and there's the photo he took. He didn't record a video with that one. And you can see here on the map, look, just around St. John's, these are the places he'd visited. So this is the Topsail Beach
So that's
one.
his icon, that little boat there. Okay.
Yeah,
sure.
that's exactly that. Yeah. And if I click the one here on Signal Hill, so I've just clicked the map icon, it's highlighted the row in the list, and that's changed the detail view.
Now,
So you
I
can
love
actually,
the way that you presented his note there. That's in like a little animated box. Is
yeah,
that like a
yeah.
JavaScript widget you found someplace?
It isn't. It's CSS.
It's
The
all
glory of
CSS, huh? Neat.
glory of CSS. Yeah, really neat. So it's I wanted it to be even more sort of typewritery, and if we'd have carried on, if we'd had a bit more time to work on this bit,
Use a, yeah, like a
Fallon,
typewriter font or something.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, even more sort of like old school typewriter, or even Morse code. We could have done it in Morse code. How about that? The nerd, the geeks. That would have been great.
Yeah.
All of these controls are standard Alpha controls. Everything's built just with Alpha. This is really cool, by the way. Can you see the logo bottom right, which is his boat?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now this,
Okay.
this is so cool.
Right.
Fiverr. Are you aware of Fiverr? The
Oh yeah, I do use Fiverr. Yeah,
Fiverr
for
is
getting stuff
just
built.
phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Fiverr, I just sent a photo of the boat to a guy on Fiverr who could turn it into a vector icon or a cartoon, and like
Yeah.
2 hours later, this beautifully
Yeah.
rendered image came back. And he worked so hard on it. It's such a cool. Fiverr, I think, is great for little jobs.
Can I
Little
ask what
graphic
it cost?
designs.
Because it wasn't
Uh,
five pounds. It
it
was
was about $8, I think,
oh
all in.
okay.
Yeah, about £5. Not far off £5.
Not far off. All right.
Not
Yeah.
far off. Um, Spawned a little rotating sort of carousel of images here for sponsors. Look, Alpha's
Yeah.
on there as well because you were hosting the Alpha Cloud side of this. This is all
Hmm.
run on Alpha Cloud, by the way, Dave. I forgot to mention
Yeah.
that. So this is something that people might not be aware of. You can publish to Alpha Cloud and you get an Alpha Cloud URL that comes up. Quite a long URL that's got your company name in it and your app name in it and Alpha software in it. And
Yeah.
the actual URL can be quite long. In fact, if I drag this one across, which is a system I'm going to show you later, you can see that's the sort of typical Alpha Cloud URL.
Easy to remember. No.
Yeah, no, I'll be honest, Dave, it isn't. But very easy feature in Alpha Cloud is to link a domain that you've bought with the web system that you've developed. So that's all we did there. So it doesn't look like
You
this is
did that.
hosted on Alpha Cloud.
Custom domain, but also your own SSL certificate as well that went along with those.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what we had to do here. So we bought the domain. It wasn't a cheap domain because it's the app suffix. That's not. I think we had to pay. I can't remember. It wasn't like $1 or $2. It was more than that, but it wasn't crazy money.
Yeah.
But as you say, you then need the certificate to go along with it, so that you get,
Mhm.
you get a really professional looking application. So yeah, a couple of things we've done here then. So we've got the list view on the right, and as I say, you click on a row, it updates the detail view. It also redraws the marker and makes it like the current marker. If you click on the markers, then it highlights the appropriate row in the list. That's quite nice. So it's a two-way thing. And the most recent row, so the most recent update is the one, and it's hard to see actually on the land, but that's actually the same icon for his boat, but reversed, it just flipped. So it's, instead of looking left, the boat's looking right because he's heading, of course, from St. John's, which is here, across to Falmouth in the UK, which is, wow, this is a long way, which is there. So we made the icon sort of just, we turned him round. So each day the icon is, tracking across the Atlantic. Some days I'll go backwards. I actually helped a friend, just as an aside here, I helped a friend swim the channel, the English Channel,
Wow.
about 15 years ago. This is the English Channel here, and there's a very famous challenge. In fact, there more people have climbed Everest successfully than have swum the English Channel successfully. It's really, really, really hard thing to do.
I think it was within
Really.
our lifetimes that someone had done it for the first time. Is that correct? I think it was
It may not be in our
70s,
lifetimes, but
60s.
it's
Yeah.
not far. Yeah, it's not a long, long
Yeah.
time ago. It's
Yeah.
really hard. By a straight line, it's 21 miles. But
Yeah.
when my friend did it, like most people, because of the tides and because it takes a long time, you actually swim like an S shape because you're fighting the moving water all the time, moving
Oh my
tides. And I
goodness.
think he swam 42 miles. I can't remember, but
Wow.
it was a very, 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 very long. Sorry about these Facebook notifications that are coming through. Anyway, it's yeah, a very long way. But what I was going to say was so we got a track that was off for like a Garmin type GPS thing. I can't remember what, but we got like a track, and the idea of our app is the same thing. So that as he's crossing the Atlantic, we're getting the same track, and who knows how straight the line it would have been, but or it would be, but he was heading from there to Falmouth. So let's have a quick look at how we built that. It's actually in the same Alpha project or workspace. This is the UX for that. Again, it's one component, and it's it's not that many controls really. There's the Facebook button, which takes users of the page straight through to his Facebook page, the YouTube button, the GoFundMe. This is the list, which is on the right hand side. Notice this one, we've done a right to left panel layout, which is a little bit unusual. Mostly it's left to right. We did right to left. The list, that, like I say, is on the right-hand side there. Here are some buttons that appear on the right-hand side. Here we've got the free-form layouts, that controls that actually set out the main content on the page. We've got some static images. That's the one of Andrew on the left. If I just flick back, I can show you where I mean. Back to that one. So that's that image there of Andrew. We've got the photo, the video, and the audio. They're all there. So, and there isn't a lot to it. And then we've got just a bit of static HTML for the sponsor logos, which is in that carousel. Sorry, in fact, that's a view box. Sorry, beg your pardon. That's a view box.
Nice.
So the view box, so the view box itself has got the logos in with a bit of CSS to make.
Can I take a look at the VBEX view box layout while you're there? Because people always are sort of interested in that sort of thing. Wonderful.
So there we go. So yeah, mainly done with CSS. And yeah, so.
And you're using font format directives so that it lists all of the sponsors that you have on the list there. Very nice. Yep.
There you go. Yeah. So that gives us that effect. If I go back to here, so that effect where we're scrolling around, and you can also click the arrows to make it move in a particular direction. So nice one for things like, exactly what we've done there. So yeah, like your client logos on a website or your system, or even things like we do this sort of thing all the time, Dave, for notifications. That works really nicely. So if you've got a system where things happen. So we've got a system that sells into the healthcare space, into hospitals and doctors' surgeries. And as people are moving around a hospital, records are written to a table. And these are effectively notifications for the reception staff. Somebody's moved from room to room, or somebody needs some help, or somebody needs whatever. And we show notifications in the same way. So you get, I think any screen in an application which has got a bit of movement really helps, doesn't it? It just makes it feel more alive. Even though it's the same data, it just feels.
It does, yeah, absolutely.
Feels more. Published to Alpha Cloud, as I mentioned, and yeah. So this is the tracking side of what we were doing. I'm just checking to see. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to cover off there. Basically, a list, a detailed view, and a bit of mapping. Oh, the mapping! I wanted to show you the mapping because the mapping is so easy. We haven't written any code at all to do what we did there with the markers, Dave. It was all done in JavaScript actions. Because the JavaScript actions in Alpha, we've got some really functional, really strong, really rich Google Map methods. So what you can do, for example, is you can say map data from a list. So that's what this action's doing here. It's saying place markers on the map, but take the data from the list. And the list is that all latest messages one, the list on the right-hand side. And you can specify in the action, you can specify what appears as the sort of marker title. So that's when I hover. So I think we've just put the location on, I think, from memory. Let's just have a look. So if I zoom in. Yeah, so we've put the, but we could put anything like there, like, is message or the weather or anything at all. And yeah, these are, and again, you've got the events that you can attach. So when you click, what should you do? Well, that's when we reselect the appropriate row in the list. So the map actions through Action JavaScript, really powerful, and they enable you to do things that otherwise you'd have to write the code for. And you might imagine having to write the code for, but in fact, it's really rich Alpha in this respect. I think the Google Map integration is good. It's a shame with Google Maps, of course, that you now have to pay for use. That this wasn't the case a few years ago, and some of our applications, because we heavily use geocoding and mapping, we're spending 4 figures a month now easily with Google, Dave, just on mapping costs. So it isn't necessarily cheap. But of course the features are, they're really
strong. Especially for a public-facing app, a lot of it just has to do with the number of calls that you're making back. So if it's, absolutely. Yeah.
There used to be a good open source equivalent, didn't there? Was it Open Street View or something?
We've looked at that, and the other map maker, of course, is Bing, who, and we had thought about integrating Bing as well. We may look at that again. Bing had, at the time, we were looking at it a couple of years ago, more favorable pricing Although the maps are a little bit different. Some people prefer Google over the Bing maps. So it's,
That's really interesting.
yeah.
I wasn't aware that Bing was even doing mapping.
Yep.
I wonder
Yep.
if
They have for
I wonder
quite a
if
while. Yeah.
oh, okay, that's interesting. I'll have a look.
Okay.
Over here in the UK, which is where I'm sitting today, the um, Google Maps, I would say, is 100%, 99.9% of the market on Android devices and laptops, and then Apple have probably got something,
Oh,
they've
sure. I
got
see it
different,
all the
yeah,
time. Or even if you're just on the internet at large and you're on a, say, a media site, a newspaper site or something, and they're going to show you a glimpse of where something happened or a route was, they do tend to use Google as the
yeah,
go-to. Yeah.
they do. And of course, the other thing you see with Google Maps, especially on public-facing websites, I see this all the time, is where Google have imposed the like the watermark that says that there is no like license key being used or whatever the expression is in it, and you're not allowed to be doing it. And it says, "Are you the owner of this website? You should get into." But anyway, I mean,
Yep.
they've got to make money, haven't they? I mean, Google make no
Yeah.
money
Well,
at
you
all.
know what?
Yeah.
That's fine when you're testing, right? But it's not, yeah.
Okay, so there we go. So that's the Big C Tracker app, the allowing him to post messages with locations, and we track him across the internet with all of
Mhm.
that, like I say, all that stuff about how difficult it is to manage with a very, very, very low bandwidth connection, albeit a really reliable one. So fair play to the satellite phone manufacturer; they really got that working well.
Yeah.
So back to the story. Unless we've got any questions at this point, Dave?
None at all, although I'm sure someone's going to say, how much does it cost to have a satellite connection? That can't be cheap.
Who knows? I think they gave it to him for nothing. So
Oh, okay.
like sponsored. Oh, there's one thing I wanted to show you. Do you know what GATF stands for, Dave?
I do not.
GATF.
GATF.
If I show you this component, can you guess? Grids are the future. GATF. Grids are the future. This is
Grids of the future. All right.
grids
I
of the
was not
future.
expecting that's what it would be, but okay. I'll be honest. Yeah.
Grids. If you've come to Alpha in the last year or two, you may not even have created a grid. Grids are old school Alpha, but we love them still. We still use grids, Dave. Grids are the
A
they're
lot of people
great.
still use grids, and if you're working in a web application, they're an absolutely wonderful type of web component to use.
Aren't
They're
they
not
just?
optimized for offline use and offline data synchronization, so that's why we often are a little bit more heavily into the UX component instead. But this
Absolutely
is a
right.
web
No,
component, so yep.
it absolutely. So we wanted something. Yeah, I'm sort of teasing when I say grids of the future. But whenever I say that, and Selwyn ever hears me say that, he sort of bangs his head on the desk. But
Yeah,
the
but at the same time, we're still building new features for grids, so it's not.
exactly,
Yeah, no,
exactly.
we're still there. Yeah, yeah.
So we needed something internally so that we could look at the data that Andrew had sent, modify it if we needed to, upload extra files or do whatever. And it's 30 seconds literally, and you've built a grid that enables you to modify it and view and search, all the data. So for a little internal data maintenance tool, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And you get to see all the media, live there. You can put the upload buttons on really easily. So yeah, so I just wanted to mention that even if this particular grid was never supposed to be public facing, it's only internal for ourselves, because while Andrew's at sea, we're his sort of communication channel. So we'd be monitoring all this data and making sure that it was sensible and in a good place. So yeah, grids are not to be sniffed at. So back to the story then. Now I've shown you what we built for the second part of the tech that was involved. Oh yes, now I wanted to show you this as well, just to fit this in. So we've been building apps for years. We've been building web systems for a long time, and we've got a couple of guys that work for us who are really talented designers. Fala, based in Indonesia, really good design eye, really good CSS skills. And we do a lot of work that people really, really enjoy and really rate. And we sometimes take old systems, Dave, that people come to us and say, I want to give my system a refresh. And it's one of the services we can give to other developers, other development companies. However, with this particular one, I wanted to have a design company take a look and see what they thought of what we'd done, because in my eye, it didn't quite feel social media enough. It didn't quite feel challenging enough. It didn't quite, feel quite as polished as I wanted it to be.
Hmm.
So I asked a design company called Formation, who we work with over here in the UK, to take a look. And this is what they came up with. And it's really interesting, I think, because it's the same data, just presented completely differently. So this was the homepage. So you can see they've even come up with an icon. And I like this, the big C. Oh, by the way, it's called the big
It's
C.
like a. Oh yeah, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry, Dave. Yeah, I was going to say it's the Big C. I think I forgot to mention. It's called the Big C Atlantic Challenge because the Atlantic is a big C, but predominantly because the Big C stands for cancer. That's what we know cancer as over here. And Andrew lost his mother and his father, and in fact, the designer of the boat, all to cancer. So Andrew was raising money for cancer charities. But you can see, I like that logo. I think it's quite cool. It's like a drop in the ocean type thing, isn't it? With the sort of the ripples going out from the thing. That's what I'm sort of seeing in the logo. I don't know if you agree, Dave.
Oh, it's amazing. And I do like the C. The C is an upside down map marker, which is very clever.
Oh, I hadn't spotted that.
Oh,
That's even
right.
more clever. That's even more clever.
Or it could be a drip of water as well.
Yeah.
Raining.
So
It is.
they've got the Guinness World Records logo on here. They've got a really
Yeah.
nice sort of watermark map behind. A bit about the story, which is really good. The count of users. We actually had a count on our page and just took it off at the last minute, but we should have put it back on. And then you can go through to track the journey. And this is what they came up with for the main sort of page itself. So they shrunk the map down quite a bit.
Yeah.
Sponsors presented differently, but in a vertical rotating carousel.
Yeah.
This was nice with the text update. And then what we got going on is this animated. So this wiggly line from the USA to the UK was an animation, so that the boat would sort of get as far across the line as approximately Andrew was on the journey. That was the idea there. So some
Yeah.
really nice features.
Very
And if I just
unique.
scroll down, yeah, really cool, isn't it? So, and you can switch here between the photo, the video, and the audio. Switch between different days. I was really pleased, really pleased with this. And I think it goes to show that what I wanted to show Dave really was we all, lots of us think we've got an eye for design, but actually, if you're a specialist, it's something quite different, isn't it?
It really
If
is.
this is your
Yeah,
job, it really is. So
Yeah.
it's worth spending a bit of money sometimes to apply that level of polish to what you're doing, I think. So that was, that's what they wanted. So I wanted just to show you that, to
And
show you
when you
how.
work with designers, because sometimes people do ask us sort of about what the workflow is like on that. And usually, at least the way we've done it, maybe you've done it differently, is what we get back after showing them. Well, first of all, we show them our best effort. So they have to obviously do better than that.
Hmm.
But usually all you get back though from them is a PDF or JPEGs or things like that. And then it's sort of up to you then to take that design and make Alpha Anywhere duplicate that. And that's sort of the
Sometimes,
challenge.
yeah. Sometimes we give because with Alpha you can very easily apply CSS and all of the internet standard ways of styling things. We often give a prototype application, live application to a designer and say, log in, have a look, and they actually work, much more in an integrated way. But you're right, sometimes you just get a PDF
Yeah.
back.
Oh,
Set
do
of
they
graphics
sometimes work in Alpha, or at least give you back CSS that you can use as
So, yeah, give us back
to work out
CSS.
what they're going to do?
Rarely
Yeah.
work in Alpha, occasionally, but it's
Yeah.
generally giving us back CSS. Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're back to the story now, Dave. So we've talked about some of the tech, how we built it. We've talked about Alpha Cloud, Alpha Launch, Alpha Transform. We've talked about involving design firms, and we've talked about some of the technical challenges. Those were our technical challenges. But coming back to Andrew's story and the spoiler alert at the beginning, what actually happened? So he was due to set off next Saturday, but when he got to St. John's, the weather forecast changed. Now, clearly the weather is absolutely critical to something like this. He was planning on hitting 2 or 3 Atlantic storms. That was in the plan, but he needed to have a week's worth of really good winds in his favor. The idea being he'd get pushed down from St. John's into the Gulf Stream. If he got into the Gulf Stream, then actually the Gulf Stream would sort of carry him across the Atlantic. So he ended up leaving a week early. He left last Saturday. But the day before he was due to leave, he was working on the boat, doing some last minute sort of improvements, modifications, fixes, whatever, and left in a little bit of a hurry on the Saturday in order to catch this weather. Now, the TV crews were there. There were journalists from, you know, around the world there to see him off. That's him in his dry suit there. He got, you know, that was him ready to go. And here's the boat, look, on the quayside. In fact, with our logo on, actually, yeah, with our logos there on the side of the pod. And this is the pretty much the last photo that anybody took of him as he set off. Unfortunately, only a few miles into the journey on the Saturday, the boat developed a leak. And I think, and I've only had a chance to speak to Andrew a couple of times since this, once when he messaged me off the satellite phone, I think possibly related to the work that was happening sort of just before he set off. So the boat developed a leak. He had to call for assistance and get towed back to shore and back to St. John's Harbour. And he was exhausted. He was, you know, upset because he was sort of geared up to 3 months on the open sea, heading across to the UK. And, you know, within the first 24 hours, he'd had to turn back. But the leak was fixable. It was fixable. It was okay. So he left the boat in the harbour, and I think had just a couple of hours sleep, you know, just to go back then in the morning to look to see what was causing the problem, take the boat out of the water and fix it, and then set off again. But the hoist, the crane, and I think actually you can see the crane. Yeah, you can see crane in that photo. Actually, the boat's sort of attached to the ropes there. When he got back in the morning, the boat had essentially sunk. It had taken on a lot of water. They attached the ropes to the boat from the crane, hoisted it out. But as they hoisted it, something snapped and the boat dropped from a height onto the quayside full of water and essentially broke into pieces. And there was his dream in pieces as well as the boat. You know, it's a terrible analogy, but that was it. And he instantly realized that the boat was not going to be repairable, that the damage caused by the drop from the crane was just too much. He posted, it then went sort of, all the newspapers picked it up, the TV picked it up. This was one of our sort of main newspapers over here, talking about the heartbreak after the vessel took on water and was destroyed. This was on the main breakfast news channel over here in the UK. That was like, it was headline news. And I don't recommend you watch his Facebook video that he posted the day that it happened, because he was just in bits. You know, the poor guy
must be completely distraught. Yeah.
Oh,
wow. Yeah.
Just awful, because he felt embarrassed that he wasn't hit by a whale or a boat or swamped at sea in an Atlantic storm. It was a crane lifting the boat out that you know, something happened, the boat dropped to the ground and broke. It's like the worst possible way that, you know, that this story could have finished for this year. And I say for this year because, you know, there's this weather window, this summer weather window where this sort of thing is possible. He's distraught and he's broken at the moment and he's so upset, but I'm just hoping, you know, that he can perhaps regroup for next year. Who knows?
Yeah, let's hope. That would be cool.
And I guess just the last couple of slides here, Dave, just last couple of minutes, well, 5 minutes or something.
So you're not just going to leave us on that low note and say goodbye? Right?
No, I can't. I've been too depressed myself for the last few days.
Wow, geez.
This is all quite raw, you know. This is. We were so excited. We were geared up to supporting him, and
we were excited here too. Yeah.
I mean, all of your tech on there, you know. Oh well, yeah. This is look. So you got to look for the positive. I think you've always got to look for the positives in any situation that happens, you know, like this. First of all, it could have been worse.
Yeah.
It really, really, really could have been worse. If this had happened 500 miles from coast, you know, let's not even dwell on the possibility.
Nope.
It happened within a few miles and he was able to get a tow back and he's in one piece and he can go back to his wife and daughter, you know, and regroup and think of the next adventure, or indeed have another go at this one. So it could have been worse. We actually learned a lot in this build. And we've got a system that we're building at the moment called Alpha Route. I'll just drag this over. We've called it Alpha Route at the moment, but I just spotted that there is actually another product in the market called Alpha Route, so I'm going to have to change the name. I got to change
Spell
that. But
yours
that's
with an F or something. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. And this, weirdly, it's strange, isn't it, how the jobs you get. This is a system we're building for a waste recycling company. They collect bins, you know, and waste, you know, containers and things from commercial premises full of
Metal,
bottles.
glass, paper, that kind of
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
Hmm.
You got it. Cardboard, paper, all that sort of stuff. And then
Yeah.
they recycle it. They collect it, they recycle it. And they were having problems with optimizing the driver routes. So they're doing, the
Sure.
drivers are going out at 5 in the morning, working till, you know, 4 in the afternoon, perhaps collecting from 60 different premises during the day. And obviously what's key to their business efficiency is minimizing their driving.
Yeah.
So so that's what we've built for them here. So they can put in customers, they can put in details about drivers, depots, locations, sites that they work at, the vehicles that they've got, the types of bins that they collect, or type of, you know, paper, metal, glass, whatever. It's a multi-tenant system, by the way. We build all of our systems multi-tenant. Here's another good tip. Even
Yeah.
if you're building a system for one customer, build it multi-tenant.
I
Therefore, it gives you the
remember you
opportunity.
said that
Yeah,
because it
yeah,
lets you do tests without
it
messing up
does.
your client's data. That kind
It
of thing.
does, and it makes it so
Yeah.
easy to sell to another customer. So even if you're building it for
You know,
one customer,
ridiculous.
build it.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
build it for more straight away. It's so easy. So we're using the dynamic connection strings in Alpha. Look that up in Alpha if you've not used them. So dynamic connection strings help you build a multi-tenant application. I've logged in as
Yeah.
a super user here, so I
Well,
can see
and
the
I could just add a little bit to that. They're a good way to
Sure.
make sure that everyone, when they're concerned, they say, wait, this is multi-tenant. I want to make sure that my data isn't accidentally accessed by somebody else on the system or intentionally accessed by someone else on the system. And
Absolutely.
that's what the multi-tenant driver will let you do, is that it will not let you make a SQL query unless you have specified that key field for who the tenant is.
You're absolutely right, Dave. And you'll see in the connection names, you'll see the dynamic connection part. That's the sort of giveaway that you've used multi-tenant dynamic connections. So the well, that's part of the story. So the so Alpha, what am I talking about? Alpha Rouge, yes. So so our client here is putting sites in and their customers in and the type of work they're doing, all the rest. And then they can configure the routes that they want to do. So on a Monday, they perhaps go around, you know, the north of the county where they're working. I think I might have actually timed out here. Bear with me to see
Mhm.
if I have, because I opened this up before we started talking. I think I may have timed out. Let me just re-log in.
Sure.
So this uses a lot. I had timed out. This uses a lot of the sort of mapping features, as you can imagine, that we've been working on in the Big C tracker, but it also uses some of the Google Maps API that Google exposed so that you can optimize driving routes. You can do routes in Alpha without any coding. Alpha exposes some of the features that you need, but we've sort of gone a little bit deeper and we've gone into route optimization. So if I bring this up on the screen now, it's only test data this. Here we go, cool. So what we've got is, if I might go to route B, I think that's got more data in it. So what we've got going on is, this is them planning and saying, right, on a Monday, we're going to send one vehicle around the north of Telford. Here we go, we've got a little bit of data in. Going to these sites, I'm going to add this site into the list. I'm going to add another site into the list. And now you can see, as I add sites in, it's suggesting I need to re-optimize the route. If I click the optimize button, it's going to work out what the least amount of driving is to get between the sites.
Yep.
To go from depot, that's the green one, to site 1 to site 2 to 3, 4 must be hidden beyond 5, I think, 5, 6, and then ending up at the other depot where it's going. And it's listing them all here at the bottom in order. So there's not a lot of code here. Again, it's a couple of lists, as you can imagine, or 3 lists, I think, a map control, and then putting the markers on the map, and it's quite cool. It's quite cool, and this is going to solve a genuine problem for them. The bit that we've got to do that we've not done yet is some of these sites, as you can imagine, say you can only come between 12 and 1, or 10 and 11, or don't come in the afternoon.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So we've got to build all that in now. So that gets more complicated because we can't send that data through to Google. So we're going to have to process that ourselves.
Mhm.
And that's where we're at with this particular application.
And to be
But
clear,
that's
you are using Google to do the route optimization, right? You're giving them the different sites and it figures out for you what order it should be in. Is that?
yeah, at a cost. It's another one of the features that quite
Yeah.
understandably they charge for.
Well,
The
yeah,
other
every time you make it do it, add another thing. It's another, it's another ding. Yep. Yep.
It is. And the other thing with this one, which I hadn't even thought about, is
Mhm.
when I presented this prototype back to the client, the first question was, oh, okay, and does this know that these are big, wide, long vehicles, heavy vehicles that can't go down all roads? You know, if there's
Mm,
width restriction, and of course it
sure.
doesn't. So
Yeah.
that's another little, we've got to work that through. But it's coming together, and I think it's going to be really useful,
Yeah.
really useful feel for them, tool for them. So that's something we try and sort of learn from one system to add it to another. We all do that, reusing components and reusing ideas and techniques. And then the other thing I just wanted to finish on, then this is the final slide, Dave, is some of the sort of things you learn in business, especially a software business. And I think some of the things that happened to Andrew in his project, we can learn from ourselves, and hopefully this will be useful to anybody watching this on either live or on YouTube. Changing things last minute. How many times in software do you get ready for a big launch and at the last minute say, oh, I'll just improve that, I'll just change that, or I can see a spelling mistake, I'll just fix that, and
Mhm.
that last change is the one that completely breaks whatever you've built. So not, I've not spoken to Andrew in detail, I don't know, but if the thing he was working on the night before was the keel bolt, which was the thing that leaked,
Mhm.
this is that classic fix or improve something at the last minute causes you a problem on the day you launch your software. So we've learned this over the years, and when we're getting towards a system going live or a new release being launched or anything being published, we always just stop and we give ourselves like a day's break where nothing happens at all, and no one's allowed to touch anything because you can almost guarantee anything last minute breaks something.
Mhm.
Making big decisions when you're tired or on your own, this is another classic. And again, I don't know if that factored into how they lifted the boat out of the water. I know that they attached the ropes to the frame and didn't put slings underneath because it was difficult. But again, sometimes in business, in software, you've been working hard towards a launch, you make a decision, but you're a bit tired, you don't talk it through with somebody. And again, that decision turns out to be a bad decision. So big decisions, always make them with other people, to get other inputs and never make them tired. And then this is the other classic one. So we have situations, Dave, where perhaps one of our servers gets, I don't know, compromised or a disk failure or something happens, and it's not something we've seen before. The temptation when you've got a catastrophic problem on a server, say, is to go to Google and to type in the symptoms, type in the error message, type in what's going on, and find the solution. But of course, this is the first time you're fixing that problem. You should never do it. For anything that's mission critical, don't do something for the first time yourself. Get somebody involved that knows, even if it's going to cost you some money. Go to an expert, somebody that's had the situation before, because you won't regret it. And again, with this, I think this was the first time that he tried to lift the boat out with some water in it. And I guess the
Yeah.
weight of that water, overwhelmed the fixings that the crane was attached to. So I guess in hindsight, he would have done it a different way. He would have got the boat to the
Tried
surface
to
and
pump
bailed
some
it out.
water out, or yeah, who
Yeah,
knows, right?
who
Yeah,
knows?
words
Who
of
knows?
accident. Yeah, who knows, right?
But
Exactly.
again, it's sort of, we can all learn from.
Yeah.
I don't know how much that applied to Andrew's situation, but
Mhm.
as a team, when this happened, and we all sort of sat here and mourned the loss of the project for him and mourned the loss of the project for us for this year at least, we sort of thought, well, actually, we've got to take some positives we can learn from this. And finally, would we support Andrew again? Absolutely. I just think he's brilliant. I think his ambition is just wonderful, and it's inspiring, and it makes you, it makes you glad to know people like that. And we
It
just hope
really
he
is.
rebuilds next year. Yeah.
Us too. Excellent.
There you go. That's the update on
Robin,
Big
thank
C,
you
Dave.
very much for the update. Obviously, it would have been much funner for everyone, especially Andrew, if he was out in the ocean right now. But this was a really great presentation and showed us a lot about Alpha and how you put things together. So, not seeing a lot of questions. If anyone wants to get in a last minute question or comment, go ahead and type them in. It doesn't look like it. All right, hey. Again, Robin, thank you very much for doing this presentation and
You're
for doing
really
this
welcome.
project. This is really cool. Thanks for everyone who attended today. We look forward to seeing you at our next Wednesday webinar. Until then, take care and stay well.